we have started a new batch, and for this students, pan-India students approached me, messaged me that, sir, I want to see you live on YouTube so that we may be able to see how is the system going on for those students who have never been knowing OSN Academy. So it is a great moment, students, and I hope you will all like this lecture. And the first lecture which I am going to take with you is the Anglo-Saxon period. And before starting the lecture, I would just advise all my dear students who are doing graduation, post-graduation, who are preparing for IES mains, PCS mains, UGC NET, PGT, DSSB, KVS, NVS, PhD entrances and IGNOU examinations. It is a session which will make you actually understand that how to prepare and how to cultivate, how to nourish that level of experience and that level of excellence if you are actually going to become an expert in this field and you want to make your career. So students, without wasting much of our time, now we are going to start. And yes, good evening to all of you. And there are so many students who are here live with me. Sangeeta, Mahanand, Shak, Heather, Anshu, Rathi and Mahima Agarwal, and so many dear students, all of you who are live. I welcome you all here in this OSN family, and a very good evening to all of you. I hope you are all doing well, staying safe at your home, and must be preparing for UGC NET, which is going to come after a couple of months. Still, notification has not come. We don't know the actual date, but yes, the government will soon give you the dates, and I'm sure those students who will be knowing OSN Academy from today, they will be blessed that yes, they can actually make their dream come true. So, Sangeeta, good evening, Sangeeta, Sushila Rathore, hi Sushila, Iktihar, hello, and keep messaging me, students. Whatever you feel like, you can message me. I will take my lecture, and in the between I will also give you all your queries. Mahanand, yes, thank you Mahanand for your comments that my voice is superb. Thank you so much, and this is all your love and affection that OSN Academy has grown to be the best in India for its excellence, for its gratitude, for its creation, and for the students who have been coming from all over India to Lucknow for my direct classes. And it is a blessing, students, that you are getting the best sitting at home with a cup of coffee in your hand. So now have a cup of tea in your hand, have a cup of coffee with you, and let us start with the Anglo-Saxon period. Classes going or not? Yeah. Very glad to attend this, sir. Okay, yes, the class is just going to start. So the first topic which I am going to start from, where I always start the class, but yes, today's class is very special. Why वेरी स्पेशल? बिकॉज आज के क्लास में आपको ये पता चलेगा कि स्टूडेंट्स जो पढ़ते हैं ओएसएन में वो कैसे पढ़ते हैं और वो कैसे एक्सेलेंट हो जाते हैं. Why? Because they have been deep rooted with the minutest thing, and every new batch is more excellent and excellent because the system changes and the students grows with that system. So the first lecture, the first starting is the Anglo-Saxon age. Students, the Anglo-Saxon period, you have heard about this name. Fine. And now, in order to understand the history of English literature, students, it is very crucial to know the history of England. History of England को जानना बहुत ज़रूरी है अगर हमें history of English literature को समझना है. And why? Because we have to know about those people who have been ruling England. It is true कि जब तक आपको ये पता ही नहीं है कि इंग्लैंड को किसने रूल किया, how will you be able to understand the level of the British literature? So, and this is also true. Suppose अगर हम हिंदुस्तान को लें, इंडिया को लें, so इंडिया की अपनी खुद की हिस्ट्री है. In the same way, every nation has its history which is dignified by a few factors, and those few factors are the social, the political, the religious and the economic events that have been taking place in every era and every decade. Every nation, students, has its history. और आपको मैं 4 नाम लिखाता हूं. You can note down in your copy that in the entire world, whatever history and geography you are going to learn, that only depends on 4 factors. And students, what are these 4 factors? The first is social, second is political, third is religious, and the last is economical. See, I'll tell you, social, political, religious and economic. So these are the four factors which take place in the entire world, in entire system, and we have to understand all these factors. Fine. Mahanand, thank you so much for your compliments, and I hope you can also score well, and with the blessings of OSN Academy, you can also be a professor in English so that we may all be proud of you. Bhavika, good evening. Rajput, good evening. Amalayan, good evening. Good evening all of you students. So yes, एक नाम है स्टूडेंट्स, मैं उसका नाम बताता हूं आपको, हेनरी जेम्स. हेनरी जेम्स ने एक बहुत परफेक्ट कोट किया है. हेनरी जेम्स ने, सी, यू मस्ट हैव हर्ड द नेम, एंड द कोट विच ही हैज रिटन, इट इज मार्वेलस, दैट इट टेक्स अ ग्रेट डील ऑफ हिस्ट्री टू प्रोड्यूस अ लिटिल लिटरेचर. मीन्स कि बहुत ज्यादा हिस्ट्री की जरूरत पड़ती है टू प्रोड्यूस लिटिल लिटरेचर. लिटिल मीन्स ना के बराबर, which has been quoted by Henry James. And yes, history of Britain, now coming back to the history of Britain, which is marked by the people of mixed blood. Mixed blood के लोगों के ने history of Britain से mark किया है, and they are basically a blending and amalgamation of the blood of Iberians, the blood of Celts. मैं आपको स्पेलिंग चाहे तो लिख देता हूं, Iberians. Then the amalgamation and the blending of the Iberians, the Celts, then the Romans, then the Saxons, and then the Viking, and last but not least, but the Norman. ये देखिए. Got it, students? So these have been the people who have entered in this area, but the earliest inhabitants were the Iberians, who came from, ये कहाँ से आए थे? They basically came from Spain. And the four people who belong to a mixed tradition, are known for the production of English nation. इन्हों से ही मिल करके वो ब्रिटिश इंग्लिश नेशन बना था. Now, if we talk about the Celts were basically a branch of, you can say, the Indo-Europeans. The photograph which you are able to see here, see, the Celts were a branch of the Indo-Europeans who settled in Western Europe. Fine. Yes. Now, हैव यू नोटेड डाउन? आप लोगों ने नोट कर लिया जिनको करना था? सो एक उसके बाद था स्टूडेंट्स, ब्रिटॉन्स. And these Britons, they spoke a language which was same as the language which was spoken by the Welsh. They were a different people who lived on basically the side of the river which is known as Elbe, and they were known as Angles, they were known as Saxons, and they were also known as Jutes. And these Angles, Saxons and Jutes, they used to speak a language called German. And they were also barbarians who worshipped the heathen gods. एक बार ये यूजीसी नेट में ये एग्जाम में पूछा गया था जिसका ऑप्शन था ये. एंड द एंगल्स, देखिए जिसमें मैंने लिखा है एंगल, सैक्सन्स एंड जूट्स, इसमें जो एंगल्स थे स्टूडेंट्स, दे सेटल्ड along the eastern coast and named the whole country as Anglo-land. Anglo-land, इसको ये नाम दिया. And slowly it became England. You can see here. Fine. So their language was a Low German dialect. इनकी जो लैंग्वेज थी बेसिकली दैट वाज अ लो जर्मन डायलेक्ट. These are very important things, students. And what is a Low German dialect? It is basically a branch of the West Germanic language. Now we will discuss in short. In short, we can say that the term Anglo-Saxon is a modern term. It is a modern term which specifies about the settlements from the German regions of Angles and Saxony, who came to Britain after the fall of the Roman Empire around AD 410. Fine. You can note it down, students, here. This is very important for every student of English literature. And the Jutes, basically they were from Denmark. They also settled in Britain, and the Anglo-Saxons brought with them their own religious beliefs. Now, the Anglo-Saxon period, basically which lasted up to 600 years, and the date is important, that is 410 to 1066. इसको कहते हैं 600 years, that is 6th century, students. And the early settlers kept small tribal groups, छोटे छोटे tribal groups होते थे. But by the end of the 9th century, the country was divided into 4 kingdoms. 9th century आते आते जो पूरा देश था, पूरा राज्य था, वो 4 kingdoms में divide हो गया. And what are those 4 kingdoms, students? I will just note it down. You can also note it down. पहला था Northumbria. Second is Mercia. Third is East Anglia, and the fourth is Wessex. So you note it down that these are the 4 places. And Anglo-Saxon rule came to an end in 1066. Soon after the death of Edward the Confessor, who had no heir, उसका कोई उत्तराधिकारी नहीं था. And who was Edward? Edward was basically the son of King Canute. King Canute, Cenute. Who was Edward? He was the son of King Canute, who had played a very important part in uniting the Saxons and the Danes into one nation. Fine. And Edward supposedly willed the kingdom to William of Normandy. William of Normandy. He basically willed it to the kingdom to the William of Normandy, but he seemed to favor Harold as his successor. तो अगर आपसे कोई पूछता है who is the successor, तो you can tell that Harold is the successor of William of Normandy. So these are the basics, students, before entering into the details. And this is also to be known by students, all of you, that Harold was not of royal blood. He was not of a royal blood, क्योंकि वो रॉयल किसी उससे उत्तराधिकार से नहीं आ रहा था. So what happened that William of Normandy laid claim to the English throne, and Harold failed in his attempt to defend his own crown. And when William with an invading army crossed the English Channel from France and claimed it for himself कि ये मेरा है. Harold was so much defeated by the Normans. In which battle, students? In the Battle of Hastings. अगर आपसे कोई पूछे कि हैरल्ड को जो डिफीट किया गया था वो किस बैटल में, किस उसका नाम क्या था, दैट इज बैटल ऑफ हेस्टिंग्स इन अक्टूबर 1066. And thus, after this, a new era began. And what is this new era, students, which we are going to study? The social, political background of the Anglo-Saxon age. From here, actually, we start our English literature. But the basic for how we have started English literature is to be known by every student. Any questions, students? Keep on messaging and keep interacting so that I may be able to create that feeling of classroom that you are with me here. So now, if we have to study the social political background of the Anglo-Saxon age, we have to study that yes, Saxons, Jutes and Angles didn't actually conquer the country at all once. एक बार में इन्होंने अपने देश को, राज्य को नहीं conquer कर लिया. The invaders came to be known as Angles, or they came to be known as English, and the country came to be known as Angleland. जैसे मैंने आपको बताया Angland. The country came to be known as Angleland, which later became England, or you can even say land of the Angles. And each tribe chose their own king. छोटे छोटे राज्य बट गए, उन्होंने सब ने अपना अपना किंग को चूज कर लिया. And when the king died, they chose a new king out of the family of the previous king. And the idea of making the king's son the next king was not even bumped into anybody's mind. There was no regular judges for the treatment of criminals. Yes, and money was involved in settling the peace between the murderers and the victim's family or even relatives. The main division in Anglo-Saxon society was between the slave and the people who are free. However, we can say, students, that slavery was not a permanent thing. If we talk about the Anglo-Saxon women, Anglo-Saxon women were independent of monks, nuns, were basically the major landholders. And they could become principals in the major legal actions. There were several laws, there were several provisions for the orphan children. Farming समझते हैं जिसको कहते हैं agriculture. Farming was a very important occupation in the Anglo-Saxon economy. Then the Anglo-Saxons were not inclined towards the stone houses and streets left by the Romans, so they built their own villages. These people loved to party, and eating meat was their favorite dish. And they also ate bread, they took beer, and also sang songs long into the night. वो अपने फार्मिंग में they also grew wheat, barley, and even used to eat with enjoyment. They were also pagans, P-A-G-A-N-S समझते होंगे आप, pagans, worshipping lot of different gods. And we can say finally that it was until the Pope in Rome, who was sent over for a missionary, एक monk था जिसका नाम था Augustine, to spread Christianity all over. Fine. Now, the next topic which I am going to study with all of you is the growth of literature under the Anglo-Saxons. अब हम लोग मेन टॉपिक पे आ गए हैं जहां पे हम पढ़ेंगे ग्रोथ, लिटरेचर की ग्रोथ कैसे हुई इन एंग्लो सैक्सन्स के सुपरविजन में. फाइन. Thank you, Mahanand. Thank you, Kushagra, for your comments. And students, if you have any queries, you may put it down here on the comment box. Now, growth of literature under the Anglo-Saxons हम पढ़ेंगे main. Now, students, इसमें क्या पढ़ेंगे हम लोग कि देखिए for a long period of time, बहुत समय से in the 19th century ऐसा माना जाता था that the Anglo-Saxon literature represented English literature in its most backward and elementary form, बहुत embryo form में है. लेकिन in the actual fact, Anglo-Saxons or the Old English literature is actually impressive and very effective if it is read with proper sympathy. अगर उसको proper sympathy से पढ़ा जाए, so it is actually impressive and actually you can say effective too. And the literature of the age is predominantly the product of the medieval Christian church, as its subject matter, students, is pagan. इसका जो subject matter है वो क्या है? वो pagan है या Christian है. Its subject matter is either pagan or Christian. And in Old English literature, it can be recognized both the heroic epic of the non-Christian origin and the Christian epic of the biblical narrative. The Anglo-Saxon people, they worship the pagan gods like the Mother Earth, the Father Heaven, and these stories grew into a lot of sagas of the gods, the myths, with their very fresh stories, the fresh life in the war stories. Manuscripts समझते होंगे students आप, manuscripts. So these manuscripts in which the Anglo-Saxon poetry is presented are 4 in number. Very important points which I am going to discuss now. ये जो manuscripts है in which the Anglo-Saxon poetry are presented is 4 in number. I will note it down for all of you students. 4 हैं. पहला देखिए, पहला है Beowulf, दूसरा है Junius. And ये Junius क्या है students? This Junius is which contains the so-called Caedmonian poems. And the third is Exeter book. And this Exeter book contains 2 of the signed poems of Cynewulf. Then is the Vercelli book, which contains 2 of the signed poems of Cynewulf. And Anglo-Saxon poetry students can be classified into major heads too. Fine. Have you noted it down? ये मैं हटा दूं? Very important. Beowulf, Junius, Exeter and Vercelli. So now the next heading is that Anglo-Saxon poetry can be classified into other major heads. What are those major heads? No, I am teaching 99% English. Venkat, I only teach in proper English, but it is just a common thing that sometimes Hindi comes in between. Otherwise, no issues. If you are of South Indian, no issues. Personal elegiac poems. पहला आपका point आता है personal and elegiac poems. And what is this? Anglo-Saxon poetry is classified into different heads. The first हो गया आपका this personal and elegiac poem. इसमें पहली जो poem students आती है, the first poem which comes is the Wyrd देखिए. And second is the Doer's Lament, and the third is the Wanderers. एक इसके बाद और पोएम आती है जो मैं लिख देता हूं आपको, Wanderers. फाइन, इसको अब लिख लीजिएगा. एंड इसके बाद आती है Seafarers. नाउ सपोज करिए आपसे कोई पूछे कि व्हाट डू यू नो, क्योंकि अब ऑप्शनल का पेपर आता है, anything can be asked. So what is Wanderers? Wanderers, students, is an elegiac poem when a young man sighs for his dead liege lord, resulting in his loss of good fortune. उसका उसमें फॉर्च्यून का लॉस हो गया है, वो पोएम है Wanderers. And the Seafarers is basically a poem which is presented as a monologue between an aged and a young sailor, and where they discuss the various aspects of the seafaring life and what are the attractions of the sea. Then there is another poem known as The Wife's Complaint. The Wife's Complaint. So this poem, The Wife's Complaint, which is also written here, deals with a young wife who mourns her separation through false tongues from her beloved, and her enemies creates bad blood between the wife and her husband, and she also she sings the exiled in the wild wood. जंगल में वो गाना गाती है. फाइन, या when is your next class, Sheikh Heather? Okay, so do you have these eras in chart form? When the next class? Yes, Sheena, Sheikh and Hardik, ये सारी classes whatever I am teaching you, these are all in my given a beautiful presentation, and these are important even for a graduate student. Why? Because if a graduate student gradually goes to a post graduation in English, then from the very beginning he will be having the command in literature. Fine. So what happens in the university students or these days, that the students, they directly go with the poems or the authors or direct the age, and they don't understand, and that is why the students are unable to make their careers very normally. Now the next point which is coming is the war poems and the ballad literature. The war poems and the ballad literature. See, these are the war poems and the ballad literature. यहाँ पे only one poem I am going to discuss with you is the Battle of Maldon. The Battle of Maldon is a poem, students, ये देखिए लिखा हुआ है, which is about the praises of a king of Wessex and Mercia. Fine. He is basically, some confusion here. This Battle of Maldon basically is a poem which describes a heroic poem presenting or describing a outbreak of a tempest. Tempest मतलब होता है तूफान, which was to end in the Danish conquest of England. And yes, this poem narrates the battle between the Danish people and the Earl of Maldon. So ये जो पोएम है ये हमको ऐसा याद आ रहा है कि पूछा भी गया है, and this is also important for you to know that this Battle of Maldon. Now the next is the third point is the riddles, and this is one of the most interesting of the Anglo-Saxon poems, which is also known as the collection of the riddles. And the last but not least is the epic poems. And in these epical poems, the literature of the Anglo-Saxon literature is written in verse form. And many of the poems up in this is basically, secular and religious. And one of the poem which you all might be knowing is Beowulf. Beowulf, which is one of the most popular among the secular verse, we all know. And it is a poem which is more than, I think, 3,000 lines and is the oldest epic in the Germanic literature. This poem, Beowulf, narrates the adventures of a gallant whose name is Beowulf and who sails from Sweden and comes to the rescue of a person known as, anybody can tell me, Hrothgar. And who was Hrothgar? King of Denmark. Beowulf fights with the monster and kills him. And the Grendel's mother renews the attack once again. And this poem, Beowulf, concludes with the funeral of the hero. He dies, and it is actually a faithful representation of the national life and its manners. Fine. The next point the students would like to know is a brief account of the Anglo-Saxon poetry. I will give you a brief account of the Anglo-Saxon poetry, students. Now, in this brief account, students, the literature of the Anglo-Saxon period has to be classified into two groups. And what are those two groups? Pagan and Christian. Fine. Pagan represents the poetry which the Anglo-Saxons go with the oral sagas like the Beowulf, and the Christian represents the writings developed under the teaching of the monks in England. You must have heard the name of Caedmon and Cynewulf. Caedmon and Cynewulf were the two representative poets of the Old English Christian poetry. And the origin of the earliest of the religious poems have been described by Bede, B-E-D-E, in his ecclesiastical theory, in his ecclesiastical history. And Alfred, who has been the king of Wessex, is much known as the father of English prose. And he was the pioneer among the English Saxon prose writers also. Fine. Now, we come to the main portion of English literature, which is known as the Middle Age of English period. And that is from 1066 to 1485. अब वो स्टूडेंट्स का मैं आंसर दे पा रहा हूं. Mahanand, John Dryden is the father of English criticism. Yes. Harsha, I am preparing for UGC NET. Hunting adventures. Okay, correct. So, okay. Harsha Makhija, you belong to which city, Harsha? And you see, my number is given there. You can note down this number and you can WhatsApp me. You can call me for any guidance, students. आप देखिए ऊपर ये नंबर लिखा हुआ है हर्षा. The number is given there. Is words with WhatsApp and call both. So you can have all the details. The students from Kashmir to Port Blair, they are already studying from all over India, from all the states of India, for all examinations of India in the field of English literature. So you no need to worry for anything in OSN Academy. So now we start with the Middle English period, which is 1066 to 1485. Here comes the main chunk of English literature from where you will actually start liking your course. Now, if you talk about this period, and we start with that 1066, that is the 10th century. We all know that William, who was the Duke of Normandy, he invaded England, and few minutes before I told you that Harold's army was crushed and he was killed in the battle. And this incident basically took place in the year 1066. And so William became the King of England and Britain passed under the Norman rules. So students, what happened then? The Norman Conquest. When William of Normandy, the Norman came. Yes, the Norman Conquest of England is supposed to be the landmark in the history of British people and the British era. And yes, in this era, it was also supposed to be the triumph of the new aristocracy. एक new aristocracy का जन्म हुआ, which brought Norman blood to the court of the king as well as to the offices of the churches, and which also means the establishment of the Norman system of law. क्योंकि नॉर्मन राजा आ गया, नॉर्मेंडी आ गया, विलियम आ गया, तो पूरा नॉर्मन सिस्टम ऑफ लॉ बन गया. फाइन. You want हर्षा, अच्छा आप हरियाणा से हैं हर्षा, so you note down this number Harsha and you WhatsApp me and I will guide you all the things. Mostly about the मुझे फर्स्ट ग्रेड की तैयारी करनी है. एसके स्वामी. स्टूडेंट्स, आपको जिसकी भी कोर्स की तैयारी करनी है, the number is given here. You can WhatsApp me, you can call me. I will guide you for each and every exam, that what is the study material, what is the class, what are the details which you want, and anything. And Mahanand, I think you have already been knowing me from a lot many months or maybe a year. So you already have my number and you can start. The new batch has just started few days before. Fine. So now coming back to the class. Yes, I just told you that this was a development of the new aristocracy, and yes, students, there was a language gap. जो हम communicate करते हैं ना, उसका gap आ गया था between the local population and the new land owners, both people who were churchmen and also they who belonged to the aristocracy. उनमें एक बीच में gap आ गया था. And Latin was a language of mysteries. Norman French was basically now the language of law. It was the language of authority. And for the contemporary evidence about the effect of the Norman Conquest on the Anglo-Saxon society that is free from the medieval or the modern glosses, that is called the Doomsday Book. आपने नाम सुना होगा, Doomsday Book एक आती है. तो देखिए ये यहाँ पे हमें इसको करा दिया है, Doomsday Book, ये देखिए नीचे लिखा है, इसको नोट कर लीजिएगा. And the Norman Conquest also opened a new epoch for the church. The rules of the churches were absolute. All women were worthy for great respect. Chivalry became not only a word, but it was followed as a tradition. So that was an important fact. And to tell you more about this specification, if you talk about the great learning centers, Oxford and Cambridge became the great places. Paris became the great center of learning, and due to the fight or the quarrel between the King Henry II of England and the King VII of France, they had to force their training in England. And apart from all these things, in the last we can say that the Norman conquest of Britain had far-reaching results in the social, political, religious and cultural life. They accepted many of the Anglo-Saxon institutions and ancient customs and even made them more efficient day by day. Now, I will tell you something about the Crusades. What do you understand by the Crusades? See, Crusades क्या थे कि they were basically, series of there were series of religious wars, एक के बाद एक religious wars थी, and these religious wars were fought by the Christian princes of Europe to recover the Holy Land, and in particular the holy city of Jerusalem from the Muslims. And the Christian soldiers had the cross as their emblem, जो cross होता है, and hence these wars came to be known as crusades. यही रीजन था, जो कि इनके पास क्रॉस होता था, इसलिए इस वॉर को कहा जाने लगा crusades. Now, a very important thing I am going to teach you here again, that is the Plantagenet period. Now see, Plantagenet period is from 1154 and it goes up to 1399. Fine. And this is the name conventionally given to the English royal family descended from Henry II, जो descend हुए हैं Henry II से, जिसमें दो बड़े नाम आते हैं. पहले तो नॉर्मन कॉन्क्वेस्ट, यस नहीं, अब तो ये पढ़ा दिया स्टूडेंट. अब तो हम आ गए हैं प्लेटिगनेट पीरियड पे, जहां पे एक का नाम था गॉफ्रे प्लेटिगनेट एंड एम्प्रेस मैटिल्डा, हु वर द फाउंडर्स. अगर कल को कोई आपसे पूछे कि हु आर द फाउंडर्स ऑफ दिस प्लेटिगनेट पीरियड, सो इमीडिएटली यू कैन से गॉफ्रे प्लेटिगनेट एंड एम्प्रेस मैटिल्डा. These are known as the founders of the Plantagenet Empire. Fine. Now, the next detail which I am going to give you here is the chart of the people who ruled. That is 1154 to 98. That is Henry II. And who was Henry II? He was son of Geoffrey and son of son of Geoffrey and Matilda, correct? And second number is John Richard I, then John Langland, then Henry III, then Edward I, then Edward II, then Edward III. So students, these names are and dates are not that important. I have just given you so that for those students who want their backbone to be very commanding, they may also have this idea too. Harsha, all these things which you are asking, it is already in my online classes. YouTube is not a class of UGC net. I told you in the very beginning that hundreds of students from the last 2 months have been asking me just to come, just to see me live here, that how sir you teach and how we will be benefited. So today, after a lot of time, I took time and took this initiative for hundreds and thousands and lakhs of students who will be watching and will be able to understand that how they can achieve their goal with the best classes and with the best expert guidance, as I have been teaching NET and IES mains since 23 years. Fine. So Harsha, you will get the entire the panel, the online classes, the live classes, the study materials, the mock test series, everything, and that too all updated in OSN Academy. At OSN Academy, you need not to worry for anything. So yeah, Sheena Hadri. Sheena, yes, my study material is my own study material, which I have made with my experience of teaching of 23 years. So Sarita Khatkar, Sarita and my dear other students, I have told you many times, see my number is given here, and take all the details so that you may be guided everything well. And timing, don't worry for the timing, because I have my system where you can nurture yourself anytime as per your wish. How the English language got independent, yeah, that is a big issue again, and it is a big vast topic, because English language is different from English literature. OSN is Yeah, Mahanand, yes. So students, nothing to worry. You can just WhatsApp me, call me, and yes, you should be having that level of feeling of success. That yes, if you want to live a happy life, tie it to a goal. एक goal से बन जाइए students, not to people. Don't follow people. Don't follow things. And yes, if you really want to lead a very happy life, tie yourself to one goal in life. That I have to achieve this thing and I will achieve this thing. Dream big and then only you will get something big. छोटा सोचेंगे बेटा आपको छोटा मिलेगा, बड़ा सोचिए. So now coming back to, I am sure students you are well aware of everything that OSN Academy is a platform where you are getting my 23 years of experience of teaching NET and all top level and low level examinations if it is English literature. My dear students of IGNOU, PhD entrance, whether it is of JNU, DU, top level entrance examinations, you can all bank upon my guidance or my classes, my study materials, and always be sure that you are going to get success. But you have to follow me, and time is very precious. I have always been telling many students. Today, so many students joined from Karnataka, from Imphal, from Srinagar, from Port Blair even, and they were all so happy that, sir, I could not trace OSN Academy last 6 months or 1 year, but today I am feeling blessed that I got your classes. Fine. So students, whenever you get time, you call me, you WhatsApp me and get all the details and start your journey for getting that end dream. I am from Sambalpur, a small place from Odisha. I love you, lecture sir, Satranjan Goy. Thank you, Satranjan. And yes, if you are a student of English, you may follow my guidance, you may call me. Now, the next point which is very important is Magna Carta. I am sure that most of the students might not be knowing about Magna Carta, which is something very genuinely to be known by every English literature scholar. So now imagine that if you are attending my classes, students, and if you are knowing Magna Carta, 100% you are above those average students who have not been attending any classes and they are just attending here and there guidebooks from the market. So how will you nurture that level? How will you come to that fertility level? It is not possible, students. Fine. So Magna Carta. So Magna Carta क्या है, students? So I'll tell you. Before telling you about this Magna Carta, I have always been told students that, sir, I don't get notification. So it is my personal request to you, students, and an order to you also, that subscribe the channel and press the bell icon of this channel so that you may get regular notifications whenever any class or any things are uploaded. Don't forget to press the bell icon. Because I don't tell often on, so students miss some classes. So yes, Magna Carta क्या है, students? बहुत ध्यान से सुनिएगा. That अभी मैंने आपको बताया हेनरी II के बारे में. सो इसका एक बेटा था, उसका बेटा है जॉन. हु इज जॉन? जॉन वॉज द यंगेस्ट सन ऑफ हेनरी II. मैं यहां पे लिख देता हूं हेनरी II, एंड ही इज द सन, और यहां लिख देता हूं यंगेस्ट. तो अब ऐसे समझिएगा, जॉन was the youngest son of Henry II, and on the death of Richard I in 1199, Richard I की डेथ में, जो कि हुई 1199 में, John was chosen king. When Richard I died in 1199, students, John was chosen as a king, and he was the worst king, worst of the English kings. He was a bad man, he was a violent man, and he was a lazy man also, and also very treacherous. Now, I'll tell you the meaning of Magna Carta. Magna Carta. Magna Carta meaning the great charter. The great the Great Charter. And what is this Great Charter? It is one of the most famous documents in the world. It was used by the King John of England as a practical solution to the political crisis he has faced in 1215. And Magna Carta established for the first time the principle that everybody, including the king, was the son. And Magna Carta was also a peace treaty between the king and the rebel barons. How many clauses were contained in it? You must be knowing, students. 63. 63 clauses. 63 clauses were contained in it, and only 3 of those remain part of the English law now. One defends the liberties and refights of the English church. Other confines the liberties and the customs of the London and the other lovers. And the third clause kya hai? Which gives all the free men the right to justice and the right to the free trial. So this is the importance of the Magna Carta, which I hope, students, you might not be knowing, and which is an important part. And when you go for the interviews, genuinely professors asked, okay, you are a topper, you are a gold medalist, you are a net qualified, can you tell me something about the Magna Carta? And here students are unable to tell. So whatever you are getting the details, it is basically the experienced students where you get those things which you will not even find in the classes either here and there or in the guidebooks. Now the next topic which I am going to take here is the 100 Years' War. So many questions have always been asked in the interviews as well in the TGT, PGT, PhD entrance, or even while you have to write your question answers in your graduation and post-graduation, you have to mention about the 100 Years' War. What is this 100 Years' War, students? This 100 Years' War basically began in the reign of, I'll tell you, in the reign of Edward III. ये एडवर्ड III के साम्राज्य में शुरू हुआ और इसका साम्राज्य था 1327 से लेकर के 1377 तक, 50 years, and lasted for occasional breaks till 1453. So for about a century, लगभग 100 साल तक का पीरियड है, the relation between England and France was not friendly. फ्रांस और इंग्लैंड में रिलेशन बिल्कुल भी अच्छा नहीं था. एंड व्हाई द रिलेशन वाज नॉट वेरी फ्रेंडली? No, Sheena, I never teach in audio form. And audio form, I personally feel students cannot understand that things because connectivity zero हो जाती है. The connectivity with the teacher becomes zero with the audio lectures. What I feel, it is my personal feel. It cannot be everybody's. And that is why I only teach with video classes. So there were many reasons for the outbreak of the hostilities between England and France. Many reasons in the reign of Edward III. बहुत सारे reasons थे. पहला ये था कि एडवर्ड जो था, he had inherited lot of land, lot of property in France, and he also inherited a policy of interference in Scotland, which became a tributary cause of the war with France. ये भी एक बहुत बड़ा reason हो गया. And the kings of France wanted to try to come out of the English people, and the main cause was the presence of the English army at a place known as Gascony. यहाँ से वो चाहते थे कि इंग्लिश आर्मी हट जाए गैसगोनी से. They wanted that they should be out from the English, that is from the Gascony, and which is actually a French province. ये French province था, यहाँ से इंग्लिश लोग भाग जाएं. And the then King Philip II of France wanted to drive the British into the sea, and relations between the two kings thereby deteriorated day by day, and in 1340 Edward assumed the title of the King of France and gave a crushing defeat to the French at the Battle of Sluys. Battle of Sluys, Sluys, जो उसका बेटा था Sluys, and in 1346 he defeated the French at Crécy. ये सब जगह का नाम है, आपने नाम सुना होगा, क्रेसी एंड पॉइटर्स का भी नाम सुना होगा. व्हेन एज ऑफ चौसर क्लास, शेख खैदर, चौसर की क्लास बेटा, ऑल द क्लासेस इज इन माय पर्सनल पैनल, ईच एंड एवरी क्लास from all the unit 1 to unit 10, whatever is in the UGC net syllabus, what is in the IS syllabus or any other examinations are all to be given to the students. They study, and hundreds and hundreds of students are studying in my personal panel. YouTube is not my class, students. YouTube is a panel where students are aware. They meet me personally, they see me live, and they interact here, and after that they call me and they get into my class, as daily the students have been joining and qualifying Pan India past 3 years. Since then I have taken this technology. Otherwise, even today the students are ready to come to Lucknow for the direct classes, but it is now good that with a cup of coffee in your hand you can enjoy all the classes. Now, इंग्लिश पार्लियामेंट का जब एवोल्यूशन हुआ, सो यू हैव टू नो दिस इंपॉर्टेंस, दैट एवोल्यूशन ऑफ द इंग्लिश पार्लियामेंट. इसमें हम आपको क्या बताने वाले हैं? एवोल्यूशन ऑफ द इंग्लिश पार्लियामेंट. सी, इन दिस एवोल्यूशन ऑफ द इंग्लिश पार्लियामेंट, द फर्स्ट स्टेप ऑन द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल ट्री, जो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल एक पेड़ होता है, ट्री होता है, तो पहला स्टेप जो था वो था मैग्ना कार्टा का. एंड द फर्स्ट स्टेप ऑन द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल ट्री विच वाज द मैग्ना कार्टा. अब देखिए कैसे चीजें रिलेटेड हैं एक दूसरे से. अगर हम आपको मैग्ना कार्टा नहीं बताते तो ये आप समझ नहीं पाते. फाइन. So this is important that everything I am teaching is all linked with the others, and this is how we go ahead and ahead and ahead. So coming back, the first step on the constitutional tree was the Magna Carta, which suggested that 4 knights, knights means KNIGTS wala, 4 knights from each country be elected to take the change of the court. And the government of Henry III was burst out in a period of civil war, out of which parliament was born, जिसके वजह से parliament बन पाया. And Edward I, his son, whose son? Edward III का जो बेटा था Edward I, came to the throne on his father's death in 1372, and he had the awareness of laws that could rule the nation. And it was during the reign of the first 3 Edwards that parliament gradually became something like its present form. So देखिए इन राजाओं के प्रेजेंस में पार्लियामेंट फॉर्म हुआ. एंड एडवर्ड वन जो था, he knew the value of the support of the middle class. He knew that what value these middle class people have in the town, in the places, and so he decided to popularize this experiment, and he summoned, उसने किसको समन किया? उसने मॉडल पार्लियामेंट को समन कर दिया. मॉडल पार्लियामेंट, he summoned the model parliament, and the date is 1295. And the good parliament which met in 1376, good parliament which met in 1376 opened a new stage. Fine. So now I'll just take a 10 minutes break to have a glass of water. Just 30 seconds break. You be here. I'm again coming just back with a glass of water. So, it was basically a 75-minute lecture extempore with all of you students. So I took a glass of water, and I think you should also take a glass of water while sitting with me, and have a cup of tea also at your home. You must be enjoying my classes. And आप मैसेज कर सकते हैं स्टूडेंट्स, अगर आपको अच्छा लगता है तो। जो नए स्टूडेंट्स देख रहे हैं या वो देखना चाहते हैं, यू डू सब्सक्राइब द चैनल एंड नोटिफाई इट, अदरवाइज अगर आप भूल जाएंगे तो फिर आपको मिल नहीं पाएगा। नाउ कमिंग टू द नेक्स्ट स्टूडेंट्स इज इन कंटिन्यूएशन। In continuation is the social, the political, the religious and the economic condition of the Chaucer's age. देखिए, we started with Anglo-Saxon period, and slowly steadily in my 75-minute lecture, 75 मिनट पढ़ाने के बाद देखिए हम लोग डायरेक्ट कहाँ आ गए? चौसर एज पे आ गए, जहां से आप शुरू करते हैं। और अगर ये पीछे 75 मिनट के लेक्चर को माइनस कर दीजिए तो सोचिए कितना नुकसान स्टूडेंट्स को हो जाता है अगर उनको ये पीछे की बातें नहीं पता हैं। फाइन, सो शीना, इफ यू विश you can also have my audio lectures, which generally I don't give to the students because now this technology is obsolete total. So when sir is with you, when I'm teaching you with video classes, then audio classes has no role to play. Fine, Sheena. So rest is your wish, but I will always advise that go with the classes and you don't see the but have an earplug and listen it properly because the connectivity with your teacher is good. So the social, the evolution, the political, the religious, the economic conditions of the Chaucer's age. Now, as I have just told you that King Edward III came to the throne in 1327 and he ruled for 50 years. And his ambition क्या थी एडवर्ड III की? His ambition was to win a lot of fame, to win a lot of name and glory abroad. And because he wanted to win a lot of fame and glory, he fought with Scotland, he fought with France. And Edward III, along with his son Edward, who is also known as the Black Prince, he defeated France. And the prince defeated the French at Poitiers. Poitiers again is the name of a place. Poitiers. And when he captured the French king. And who was the French king? John II, and sent him to England. And the next French king whose name was Charles V. He was basically a much abler man. वो ज़्यादा काबिल आदमी था than his father and after the Black Prince death. Because जो उसका बेटा था basically he predeceased his father Edward III. वो father के पहले उसकी death हो गई 1376 में. The English could not hold France in their clutches. वो फ्रांस को अपने पास नहीं रख पाए. And the king, along with his son Edward, the Black Prince, defeated France, and the prince defeated the French at Poitiers, which I have just told you. Now we will go to directly to know about the Chaucer's age in detail. Chaucer's age, students. Now be very careful that Chaucer, the father of English poetry, is in your syllabus, and even a MA standard student, any English literature student would be love to listen this age, that is Chaucer's age. And in my personal classes, when the students join, they get the entire world of knowledge and the course. Now, in brief, I will tell you about the Chaucer's age, that Chaucer lived in the 14th century. And students, he lived at a time when the Middle Ages were drowning to a close. Middle Ages क्या हो रहा था? वो बंद हो रहा था. and many of the changes brought about the succeeding age. जो आगे आने वाली एज थी, बहुत changes हो रहे थे, and Chaucer was so much impressed with the most growing emergence, the growing expectations of the national spirit, the national patriotism of his own country. He was a page. He was a very close to the king. He belonged to the royal family, and his wife was also very much close to the king's family. And the important symptom of it was the birth of the English language, which brought about by the amalgamation of the Anglo-Saxon to the French. Now you understood, students, that why the details is required to understand the ages. And with the birth of this national language, which came with the increasing awareness and the pride for the typical English spirit, Chaucer is undoubtedly the greatest of the English medieval poets who could think much better than expressing it in his own masterpiece. And he has actually set a pattern of modern English poetry for centuries and centuries to come, in his form of poems, in the form of his meters, which he has derived from France, which he has derived from Italy, in which both of which the countries he has traveled so many times, and it feels that Chaucer has been to those places. He has met thousands of people. He has seen so many climates. He has counseled so many times on the business trips, and that is why he had an opportunity to write so well as he has, we know, in his prologue to the Canterbury Tales. And he has struck a new English note. It was Chaucer who in the Canterbury Tales gave the first full expression of the English sense of humor. You must also be knowing that they are the great three humorists in the world, that is Shakespeare, Fielding and Chaucer. When you are in the post-graduation on English, there is a question which is asked in every university. Discuss Chaucer's sense of humor, his sense of humor with the poem which you have read. So we as students, we take so many things from his prologue to the Canterbury Tales, and with examples we write to and we discuss about his sense of humor. Fine. And while England was, slowly progressing towards the modern age and the general conditions of the country in Chaucer's lifetime, that is 1300 to 1400, he reinstated the spirit of change which was very much evident in all the works of life. उसने वो nationalism, वो patriotism, वो spirit, वो dedication ले आया, and the rapid rise in population had increased the dependence of the serfs, the wageless cultivators, on the feudal lords. After this, in short discussing about the Chaucer's age, we come for the new students to know that Black Death was an important role in that period, and which was in 1348. So, to tell you something about the Black Death in 1348, basically at that time people did not bother much about sanitation, much about cleanliness, and so what happened? Leprosy and so many other diseases started spreading, and the disease which was infected was directly the cause of the dirt which reached England in 1348, and with this plague about 1/3 of the population died. And what happened, students, as a result of the Black Death? Wages, the prices escalated, they practically started doubling. And after 1349, many landowners ceased to grow because of the loss of the labor. They ceased to grow corn, and they started giving their estates to the pasture, to the rearing of the sheep. And apart from the Black Death, there is an important point in continuation, that is the Peasants' Revolt of 1381. एक प्रीस्ट था स्टूडेंट जिसका नाम था जॉन बॉल. जॉन बॉल. He was a priest, and he was, who was he? He was the imitator of the rebellion, and there were several causes of his revolt. पहली बात तो क्या था कि जो लिविंग कॉस्ट थी, it was increased because of the difficulty of cultivating the land with the available labor. There were many taxes which were imposed in 1379 and 1380, which were considered as a new form of tyranny, a new form of oppression by Richard II. Now after this came Wycliffe and the Lollards. John Wycliffe, who had started his career something like Martin Luther or William Langland, John Gower, who were very famous contemporary poets of Chaucer's age. And Chaucer, along with John Wycliffe, found that the monks, that the friars loved good food and even bad women. And because of this, lot of scandals started coming about their ecclesiastical courts. And John Wycliffe attacked the church for two things. दो चीजों के लिए उसने अटैक किया. First, the bishops and the many clergymen were immersed in the state of affairs, and secondly, the church was rich. So he started sending his disciples known as Lollards. उनको Lollards कहते हैं. Lollards का एक नाम और कह सकते हैं poor preachers. He started sending his Lollards, poor preachers, to all over the country. And these preachers were all men of the university, and they had the influence on the people. And the other important work which had actually earned him the title of the father of English prose is nothing but the translation of the Bible. Wycliffe himself translated the Gospels and the part of the New Testament, and his translation of the Bible was slowly copied all over England, and so a national standard of English prose was done to replace the other dialects as well. Now if you want to study, students, about Geoffrey Chaucer, that how to study, what to know and what not to know, and what has to be known, I will tell you in brief about Geoffrey Chaucer, who was somewhere born in 1340 and reached up to 1400, died in 1400. As we all know, students, that Chaucer was one of the greatest poets, who is still great even today, and one of the greatest, and he is one of the greatest, and therefore he is a great poet. And that is why he also got so many eminent positions among the poets of England. He is the poet of earth, and he had no, wings, and he almost spent his life in having so much interest in life with capacity for enjoyment, for taking delight in everything, and inviting his readers to share the enjoyment with him. कि आइए मेरे साथ हमारे books को, हमारी poetry को enjoy करिए. And the 14th century England, where he lived, was by no means a happy land. The political, the social, the religious, the economical situations were extremely unsatisfactory. The Black Death, the Peasants' Revolt exposed the black spots of the British rule. And Chaucer lived among this squalor and saw everything from the very, very close situations. And Chaucer was the first to choose the London dialect as his poetic language. It was a language that was evaluating. It was fresh. It was new. Chaucer was born in the 14th century, died in the 14th century, a period which marked the growth of power, which marked the growth of prestige for the traders, for the middle class, for the merchants. And The poet's father was John Chaucer, who was a London wine merchant. He owned a large number of houses and properties also. And Chaucer, in the next stage, began with the taking up service with Elizabeth, who was the wife of third son of Edward III. If I talk about 1360 to 1366, Chaucer के father की death हो गई, and he entered into a wedlock. He married with Philippa Roet. He was also studying some legal term in the temple in this period. He has traveled to Italy, he has traveled to France by giving him a lot of missions by the king, and through which he came under the influence of Italy, and that influence of Italy played a very major part in his literary career. And when Chaucer returned to England after his last tour, King Edward had died, and his minor son Richard II was on the throne, and he served the king, he served the country, though he was not a very good and capable ruler compared to his grandfather Edward III, because he had imposed a lot of taxes, lot of tyrannies, lot of impositions, lot of things were there, and people were not very happy. But the best thing as a ruler, as a king of 14 years of age he did was the suppression of the peasants' revolt. So till 1400, the year of the death of Chaucer, continued to receive the royal favors, and in October 1399, Henry IV, the new king, granted Chaucer an annuity of 40 marks. Chaucer took a large breath in the garden of St. Mary Chapel, and he was buried in the Westminster Abbey. His tomb became the nucleus, became the place of the center where people visit, and that is the Poets' Corner of the ancient abbey. Yeah. Good evening, Shubhi, good evening, Pooja, good evening, Tabassum, and all of you who have joined just now. So students, so this was the entirety of the entire session of approximately less than 2 hours, where I started from the Anglo-Saxon period, telling about the history and coming to the major issues and up to here. So students, if you have any questions now, I am here in front of you to only give your queries and answers on your message box. Now this class is over, and I hope you must have loved the classes, and I hope that you will take all the benefit of OSN Academy in the times to come, and my guidance, my experience, my love for the students, for all the branches of your course considered with English literature. Asmita Pandey, good evening Asmita. So students who are here live with me, they can message me here if you want to ask anything. What is the House of Lords, sir, and House of Commons? Yeah, this is also something which has to be discussed, and these things are discussed in my class. Sir, exam कब तक होगा? Please tell. Exam होगा November last में. मतलब this is just a tentative date, Azhar. It is not sure. So the students who have filled the form and who have not filled the form, both can start their classes for the next exam. प्लैगनेट पीरियड इन इंग्लिश लिटरेचर मैंने अभी आपको बताया तो डिटेल, आप इस क्लास को पीछे से जाकर के फिर से रिवाइज कर लीजिएगा. मैंने आपको ये भी बताया कि प्लैगनेट पीरियड का नाम क्यों है और ये क्यों शुरू हुआ है. आप लगता है क्लास से हट गए थे. आई थिंक यू वर नॉट इन द क्लास. आई टोल्ड ईच एंड एवरी माइन्यूट डिटेल्स ऑफ प्लैगनेट पीरियड. ओके पूजा, you WhatsApp me, I will tell you all the details, Pooja, that what is House of Lord and House of Commons. I will explain you, though it is already in my class. When you will join, it is already in the class. Fine. Yeah. Any other questions related to your exam, related to the course, related to American, African, criticism, critical theory, rhetoric and prosody, anything? Exam मैंने बताया तो अक्टूबर नवंबर लास्ट में हो सकता है. It can happen in October last. Sorry, November last. So now students, take care of yourself and subscribe the channel and press the bell icon for any